focus. All right. How's it going, everyone? We're going to continue on with our multiplication using area models, part 3, and I call this part hammer time, and you'll see here in a second. So we've been talking about area models, and we've been making these big, long models, these little area blocks of multiplication, and essentially what we're doing is we're just taking length times width. The area of a rectangle, and we're using that as a model for multiplication. So we're going to take it to a little bit more abstract place right now. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take that same idea of length times width, but we're not going to have the actual length and the actual width of our rectangle. We're going to be making just a box for each of our numbers. And then I'll show you how that works. And I call it hammer time because we're going to be smashing some numbers. All right, here we go. So we're going to start with something a little bit more basic. We'll start with let's find 12 times 13. And well, I could solve this normally. I can maybe even solve it in my head, but I'm not really good at my 12s, and I'm really not good at my 13s and my multiplication tables. But I'll show you a way to do this using our area model. So instead of making a big giant rectangle across our paper with 12 squares this way and maybe 13 squares going down our paper, I'm just going to make a small box like this, and I'm going to pretend that this side is 12 and that this side is 13. Now what we're going to do is we're going to break out our hammer, and I'm going to draw a little Mario hammer here because I like Mario, and it's kind of going to swing down, and it's going to smash these numbers. So when it smashes the numbers, we're going to break those numbers apart, that 13 and that 12, into two other numbers that are easier for me to multiply, because I'm not really good at my 12s and I'm not good at my 13s, but I am good at some other things. So we're going to break apart, and I'm going to redraw it. So I'll draw a little arrow right here. It's going to look like this. I'm going to keep my box here, my little pretend box, and it's still going to, this side over here is still going to be 12. But an easier way to think about 12, well, is maybe like 10 plus 2. And this side is 13, and another way to think of 13, well, 13 is just, 10 plus 3. And so now I have easy numbers that I can multiply, and I'll show you how we do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now I'm going to section off my box here that I made, and what I'm going to do is now each of these numbers share a column, have a column or a row. So like this is the 10 row right here, and this is the 2 row right here, and this is the 10 row or 10 column up here, and this is the 3 column. So now I just multiply like I would trying to find these areas of these little tiny boxes, and I'm going to add them all up. So this side is now 10 times 10, and so what's 10 times 10? Well, I know that is going to be 100. Now this side is still 10, but now this side is 3, so now I say 10 times 3, and I know my 10 times 3, and I know that is 30. And here's another way. So we have 10 times, so now I have 2 down here, and 10 times 2. So 10 times 2, I know that is 20. And I have this little box over here. Well, what do I do with this one? Well, it's in the 3 column and this in the 2 row here. So 3 times 2, I know, is 6. So now I have 100. So this one is 100. This one is 30. This one is 20. And this one is 6 right here. So now it's easy. All I have to do is then add them up. So then I say, well, okay, 100 plus 30 plus 20 plus 6. And I add all those guys up. So that is 6. This is 5. and this is 1. And so that is 156. So this is another way to multiply, but this is multiplying using these area models. And so when you get to using area models, this is what you're going to be doing. This is an actual area model with multiplication. What we did before was a very giant literal area model, and this one we're condensing it. We're making it smaller, but still saying the same thing. So now we're going to try it with a couple different numbers, and we're going to try it with going 3 numbers across and then 2 numbers down, and that works just as well. So I'm going to use the same 2 numbers. I'm going to use 12 and 13. So I'm going to say, so this is 12 times 13, but we're going to break it apart a little bit differently, and it'll still work. Our answer will still be 156. And okay, so we'll try it. So again, we're going to make our little box, and this is 12 on this side, and this is 13. And when you start using area models, you don't necessarily have to draw this first box here, but I just like to do it in the beginning, just so you can see that, well, this is 12 and this is 13, just so we don't get confused. All right, so our next box is going to be, still, we'll break that, we'll smash it again, so I'll get a even bigger hammer this time. And these numbers are going to get smashed into 10 plus 2. And another way I can make 13 is, well, I can break that apart into even smaller numbers. And let's say, well, it's like 5 plus 5 plus 3, right? Because 5 plus 5 is 10, and then 10 plus 3 is 13. So you can break it apart even more if you want. So, and then I'll just draw, give each number its own little column or row here, and now we just do the same thing. So now we do 10 all the way, multiply by 10 all the way across this row, multiply by 2 all the way across this row, by 5 down here, by 5, and by 3 down these columns. And then in the end, we're just going to add them together just like we did before. So 10 times 5, well, that is 50. I know that this one is going to be 50, and 10 times 3 is 30. And now I have 2, so 2 times 5 is 10, and 2 times 5 is 10, and 2 times 3 is going to be 6. And so now I can add these numbers up, and we'll see if we get 156. We should. So let's try it here. So I have 50 plus 50, okay, plus 30 plus 10 plus another 10, and then plus 6. And we'll see what happens here. So I got, this one is 6, so that is 10, 13, 14, 15. So there we go, 156. And look, we get the same answer. And the cool thing about these numbers, and the cool thing about math, is that, especially with adding, and multiplication, you can like break numbers apart, you know, and use a lot of these rules that we talked about before, like the distributive property and things like that, and switch numbers around, and you'll still get the same answer. So I'll give you one more, and this one's going to be a little bit more challenging. So this one's going to be an example of breaking it apart 3 by 3. And the only problem with this is that we're going to get we're going to be adding a lot more numbers in the end. So you want to try to keep your area model kind of looking like this. You can do it like this if you want. You know, once it gets really big, you're just going to be adding a lot of numbers together, which has its benefits and it has its drawbacks, and I'll go over those here in a second. So we'll try it one more time. You know what? I'm not going to write 12 and 13, but we're going to still multiply 12 times 13, but we're going to smash our number. So I'm just going to smash it here, and so I'm going to smash 12 and I'm going to smash 13 into 3 numbers that I can add together. So 12, I know, can be, let's say, 5 plus 5 plus 2, right? So that's 10, and 2 makes 12. So I'm going to put little plus signs here. And then across the top is 13. I'm going to keep the 5, 5, and 5, 5, and 3. So across the top is 5 plus 5 plus 3. And we'll make our little boxes here for everything. So every number gets its own row or column. And so 5 times 5. So now I can just start with my multiplying. So 5 times 5 goes in this box right here, and that's 25. This one is also 25. And 5 times 3 I know is 15. Now 5 times 5 I know is 25, and then this one is also going to be 25 because it is 5 times 5. And 5 times 3 is again going to be 15. And now I have 2 times 5, and that's 10, and this is also going to be 2 times 5 right here. That's going to be 10, and 2 times 3 is going to be 6. And so you see, now we have to add all of these numbers up. And so that's the, whether you like adding numbers or in the end, that can be a real drawback to this, especially when you start breaking it apart into 3 or more. You can break it apart into 4 numbers, or 4 columns, or 4 rows if you want. But that's the drawback, is that there's this big addition step in the end. So let's do it. Let's say 25, and then I have 4 25s here. So 25, 25, 25, and 25, and I have 2 15s here, and then I have 2 10s, and then I have 1 6. And so I have this big addition step, and I'm going to do a little bit of combining a couple of these. So I know that these together, 4 25s, is going to be, this right here is going to be 100, and my 2 15s is going to be 30, and my 2 10s is going to be 20, and my 6 is going to be down here. So I'm going to add those up. 100 plus 30 plus 20 plus 6. I know that that is going to be 100, and this is going to be 56. So 156 is going to be our answer. Now, why do this? Why do an area model? Well, it's really good when you get big numbers that you don't necessarily have the multiplication facts memorized. So I can probably say that some of you know your 12s very well, and some of you even know your 13s really well, and some of you know 12 times 13 in your head. And so this is one way in which we can break apart the multiplication up here. Like, this is probably the easiest way to do it, and to find an answer easily, and hopefully get the right answer. One thing that is a problem that I find with many students when they use multiplication and just the standard model is there's a mistake that I always see, and I'll show you what that is here in a second. So way down here on the bottom, I'll show you what that is. And so we're going to multiply 12 times 13 just how we normally would, just a traditional way to solve a problem. So 12 times 13, you put one number on top, one number on the bottom, and then we multiply with the 2. So 2 times 3 I know is 6, and 2 times 1 is 2. And so here is the trick that I see all the time, is this right here. This placeholder right there, that 0 right there, messes up so many students. It's not even funny. So a lot of time, especially when you're multiplying really big numbers, you're going to have 1 or 2 or 3 placeholders all the way across, and sometimes your work starts to get crooked. So it's very very difficult for some students to follow. This one, it's really easy because you can make them all into nice little boxes, and then you just add them up in the end. All right, so let's finish up this problem here. 1 times 3 is 3, and 1 times 1 is 1, and 130 plus 26 is 156. And we still get our 156. Yay! Our right answer at the bottom. All right. So hopefully this helps you understand a little bit of how to multiply using some area models. And remember, it's okay to break apart and smash numbers, especially with Mario's hammer. All right, hopefully this helps. Thanks, everyone.